TBTL.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Hey Dummies. My name is Andrew and I will be your dummy today. I'm joining you from my studio down here in the basement. Last week I believe I joined you from my garage, but gotta stay a little bit closer to home today, like literally inside the home, to answer this question from Theresa in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Theresa wants to know, I have a few movies that I don't think I will ever want to see again because in my brain and in my heart, they are perfect. But in reality, they're likely not perfect, and it would crush me to realize that. Those movies are Purple Rain, Once, and The Champ. Oh, The Champ. That's the Ricky Schroeder one that Luke talks about all the time, right? I have not seen The Champ. I've never heard of Once. And I've never seen Purple Rain all the way through either. But Theresa wants to know, what are yours? What are your movies? What are my movies? Andrew, I'm talking to Andrew here. What are my movies that I loved so much at one point in time that I am scared to go back to them, or I avoid watching them again because I feel like they won't live up to my memory? I gotta say, I've been thinking about this question for a while now. I actually seriously did. I spent like the past 24 hours sort of pondering this. And unfortunately, Theresa, I'm going to give it a go here, but like, I don't have a clean, solid answer to your question. I don't think there's any movie that I wouldn't go back and maybe even brace myself, but go back and watch. There are two movies that I saw. They're both made-for-TV movies that had a weirdly huge impact on me as a little kid, at least at that time. It felt like they had a big impact on me, and I've sort of gone back and tracked them down. Let me tell you about them. And again, keep in mind, this is from the lens of a little kid, and they're both made for TV movies, so they're not like great art or something. Again, I'm sort of missing the point of your question, I think, Theresa, but you got to go with me on this. This is the best I got. There was a movie, and I've talked about this on TBTL before, a Christmas film called It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, and it has Mickey Rooney, and this is like mid-'80s. I'm going to say, I don't know off the top of my head, I'm going to say 1984, 85-ish. It stars Mickey Rooney, who's, like a grandfather age at that point, and I'll just tell you the plot of it. Obviously it's a Christmas film, and it's fresh in my mind because I actually went back. This is one that I did go back. I tracked it down on YouTube, and I rewatched it a couple of years ago, and it is terrible. It's a terrible movie, but I didn't mind going back and reliving it, even though it's a terrible movie through adult eyes in 2024. As a kid in 1984, it had a huge impact on me because it kind of had a melancholy ending. But anyway, we'll get to the ending in a second. Let's start with the beginning. Mickey Rooney plays the grandfather of a young boy who lives in Sacramento. The boy lives in Sacramento with his family, and Mickey Rooney is a New York City cop, actually a former cop at this point. He's retired. And it kind of bums him out that his son is growing up in a West Coast lifestyle, especially around the holidays, because Mickey Rooney believes the only place to enjoy Christmas is in New York City. And so he convinces his grandson's family to come out with him to New York City to experience Christmas in 1984, 1985. This is where things get a little bit dark, though. The day before the big trip, the grandfather, Mickey Rooney, ends up having a heart attack or something and essentially dies. He is declared dead. He goes up to heaven, and we see this, by the way. He goes up to heaven. He waits in a long line, I think, and he has to talk to, like, archangels or whatever. Archangels? No, archangels. And he convinces them, the angels, to send him back to Earth for just a few more days so that he can fulfill his promise of taking his grandson to New York City to experience Christmas for at least one time. And he promises afterwards, I will come back up here to heaven. And it gets a little bit more complicated. The angels only agree to this task because they have an angel that's gone missing on them in New York City. And it's a little Wings of Desire-y now that I think of it. This is like the poor man's Wings of Desire. Anyway, so they do send him, the former cop, back down to New York City so that he can fulfill his grandson's wish to see New York City in the Christmas time, but also to track down this angel. And then, if I recall correctly, at the end of the movie, he passes away again. He says goodbye to his grandson, the only person who believes him, and after a wonderful madcap adventure in New York City, he has to say goodbye to his grandson and go up to heaven. And I remember just being a kid and being like very enthralled by that, and enchanted by that, and also like really like wistful and sad at the end of that movie. Even though it was it was like that's why I say it wasn't a sad story, but it was a very melancholy ending. And like I mentioned, I did track that down on YouTube, and yeah, watching it as an adult is very, very different than watching it as a kid. But I was kind of glad. It's got I always want to say Swoosie Kurtz in it. It's not Swoosie Kurtz. Who's the person I confuse with? Annie Potts. It's got Annie Potts in it. I don't know if I should be confusing those two actors, but I do. Another movie I have not gone back and watched is another made-for-TV movie from around the same era, like 1984, 1985. And I remember this one like hitting me hard because it was dark. I don't even know if I finished it. And it's called The Dollmaker. Now, going off the top of my head here, I'm probably going to get some of these details wrong. Again, I haven't seen it since it was on TV in the 80s, but it was about a very poor family, I want to say in the 1930s, and they live on a farm somewhere, or maybe even in the Dust Bowl, I'm not sure, but they move to a city, I want to say like Detroit or Chicago or something like that, so that the husband and the family can get like a factory job or something, but they're dirt poor, and the mom has a talent for making dolls, thus the Dollmaker, right? I'm not going to go into detail here because there is a scene in it that is so dark, and that is what like terrified me as a kid, and what made this movie kind of imprint on me is there is a scene where her daughter has a terrible accident on the train tracks. And I just remember the moment that happens in the movie, I must have just been a little kid with my mouth just like wide open, not believing what I was seeing. And then I remember the scene of the mom running into the hospital with like what I think she had like whatever money she had made from making dolls, and she's literally throwing it on a gurney, telling like just like loose bills, telling the doctors like save my daughter. And I was a little kid, and it was like one of the most tragic, traumatic things I'd ever seen on TV. Now, that one I have not gone back and watched. Again, it was a made-for-TV movie. I don't think... Oh, I've looked it up since. I think it's Jane Fonda or something in it. So it's not like, so it's like... It's probably pretty well made. This was probably the heyday of made-for-TV movies. I don't know if I want to go back and watch that, only because it was just so tragic. I just remember it being a bit of a slog of a movie. I mean, as a kid, I probably didn't get a lot of it. And then this tragedy happens, and I was just like, oh my God, what is going on in the world? And what's my role in it? And will I have a podcast someday? All right, everybody. I don't think I answered your question, Theresa, but I did my best, and I thought about it for a long time, and I talked for a long time, and that's what's important. Thank you for the question. Again, if you guys could send us more questions, email me, andrew@tbtl.net, and put Hey Dummies in the subject line. And just a reminder, there won't be a Hey Dummies video or a newsletter next week, but we'll be back the week after that. Hope you all have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.